Hello, welcome to Spirit Insight. I'm your host, Laura Lydrock. Today I have with me Chris MacRainey. Chris experienced a profound NDE when he had a heart attack followed by a deep stroke, in which he flatlined 23 to possibly 24 times and had profound experiences. So Chris is going to tell us about that and what he brought back and the knowledge that came with his experience. Thank you for joining us today, Chris, and I welcome you, and I'm so thankful for you sharing your story with us.
Thank you so much for having me today. I'm very excited about being able to communicate what happened. Um, so I'm just pretty much a normal, average person, and like things like what happened when I had my heart attack had never really happened to me before. So it was pretty shocking. I'd had a heart attack after work. I was at home, um,
Wow.
and I was there with a roommate who slept nights and I worked nights, and then I'd gotten home, and then I had my heart attack. And it was very sudden. It was a massive coronary heart attack. I had basically 100% blockage of my heart. So then my heart was unable to function. And so um, what happened was my heart went into ventricular fibrillation, where it starts like pulsing and surging. And it's trying to like restart properly, and it couldn't. And then I went into something called atrial fibrillation. And basically, that's like your heart slowly winds down and stops beating. Um, so, so I, I, uh, I died at home, and my dog was really triggered by what happened because I collapsed very abruptly. And so he went and tried to wake the roommate up from their bedroom to come and see what had happened. And um, my dog is really pushy, and so he was able to convince them to get up and come and see what happened. But it took a really long time for that to happen, like maybe 20 or 30 minutes of the dog running back and forth and stuff before the roommate was able to get up and come and check. So at that point, I had actually expired and been laying dead on the floor and in one spot for almost a half an hour by when I was found. Um, and my roommate drugged me out of the hallway into the main room and started doing CPR on me. And he also had to go and find his cell phone and to be able to call 911. So there was a lot of, I think, in the first moments, a lot of panicked stuff for him to process and try to figure out. And it sort of ended up, I guess there was some serendipity involved at that point, because when he called 911, the police were already in the neighborhood of the trailer park that I was living in, because they were serving warrants that day. So they were just like maybe 2 blocks away from where I was at when the call went out. So they were there in a matter of minutes. And then the officer that came on scene, I'm sort of telling this secondhand, obviously, because I was dead at the time. But the officer that came on the scene had a defibrillator in his vehicle, so they started to do the chest compressions, and I'd already come back once with my roommate doing compressions on me. But since I was in AFib, my heart just would wind back down and stop working. So then they brought the defibrillator, so they're shocking me at this point. And for me, it was very like chaotic experience that didn't make any sense to me because I would be standing outside of my body, like dead, and looking down at this scene that was happening in front of me. But to me, I couldn't even process that that was me laying on the ground, like being worked on, like because there was no sense of self at that point. Like as soon as I would die and step out of myself, and just be standing, I guess, in my soul, just standing there, I was able to see what was happening around me and see the officers working on me and all of these sort of things. But there was such a distance and disconnect from it that I didn't even realize looking down at myself that was me on the ground because I was when you get back into your soul, you body, you're just you know that like this is you, this is where you really are, this is really you, and the reality of the situation that was happening in front of me um didn't seem real. It seemed like I couldn't understand even. It seemed like a weird B movie all of a sudden I was watching. It was like really, I was like, what is happening? And and then I would suddenly be back in my body, like electrocuted, back arched, like feeling this horrific burning pain of electrocution being brought back into the body. And then it would start winding back down, and then I would flatline again, and I'd be back out of my body. Um, and and this went on at least 9 times um, with the police department, and by that time the ambulance had gotten there on scene, and they were trying to get me onto a stretcher and out of the house. It's a trailer house, so they had to get you downstairs and all of these sort of things onto the ambulance. And then I know I expired several times on the ambulance, and at that point I was hooked up to machine, so they were able to tell. And then I went to the hospital, and this was in a small regional hospital in Craig, Colorado. And so it was volunteer, paramedics and volunteer EMTs that usually man the ambulance. And so people are like trying to leave work to get to you, to get you to the hospital. And then it's not really like a big trauma center, in Craig, Colorado. So I kept dying on the table while they were trying to stabilize me enough to put me onto a helicopter that they'd called in. So they flew me. They put me into a helicopter. Um, on the top of the building in Craig, Colorado, at the hospital. And the last time that I remember seeing my body at that point, they were loading my body into the helicopter and taking off, and I was still standing on the roof of the hospital with other people, and then those people like sort of go back to where they're supposed to be, and then it was just me. So at that point it sort of gets broken up a little bit because what happened was they had to get me sorry. um they had to get me by helicopter to Glenwood Springs, Colorado, and then they got me into the intensive care. They had a surgeon put stents in my heart, and I ended up with 4 stents in my heart. Because of the blockages that I was having at that time. And then I woke up in the hospital, but there was like a really big delay of almost 2 weeks, but between getting stents put in my heart and when I woke back up in the hospital, in intensive care. So there was just this sort of missing time for me. Um, and for everyone else, the world, everything kept going, right? So people were like coming to the hospital and seeing me like in a coma, and unresponsive, and there were a lot of things that were happening to my physical body, and I really wasn't present for any of those things. So what ended up happening that I can remember in my experience is I was on top of the 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 hospital, the helicopter's taking off, and then I just wasn't there anymore. I was like somewhere else. So that was really the start of the near-death experiences that I was having, because up until then I was still very present and close to my body. I was cl in close proximity, I would go through uh, my AFib, and then I would die, and then I would flatline, and then I would be out of my body and just in my soul body, and then it just was like this tug of war of being in the body and out of the body, and they were giving me like the maximum amount they could shock you with, and then I would be back in the body, and so there was that. But then I'm having a completely different experience now, because I'm I can't see where I was at anymore. There's no helicopter in the distance and me looking down at the ground on top of the building anymore. At this point, I am like in another place. And at first it was complete darkness at where I was at. And to me it seemed like just pitch black, dark, and it went on forever. You just felt like it was just vast. There was a vastness to it, but it wasn't cold like outer space. You would, think that it's like freezing cold or something where you're just in this dark void, but there wasn't that at all. And then it felt like there was movement happening, but I really couldn't see the movement happening around me. And then I started to see like a light in the distance. And then I realized that I was in outer space and there were stars in the distance that I was like seeing and visualizing all of these things. So that seemed like I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. And at this point, I don't even realize that like what's happening, or I just am having this experience. And then the light just kept getting brighter and brighter and brighter. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is happening? And I'm thinking all of this stuff. And then I realized that I'm like in this other place at this point, and I'm like going through just like space, but there's like a destination that I'm heading towards, and I'm not really sure what it is. And then it just seems like I felt really at peace with what was happening. And then I realized that the bright thing that I'd been seeing all this time was like a person, or like a figure of some sort in the distance. And then I see that there's like other beings around me at this point, and I feel that there's like these like really bright beings with me. And then I felt like complete peace and complete love and complete understanding. Like I felt the vastness of the universe all around me, and completely felt that I was a part of all of these things. But it was more like you didn't just feel, you felt like all of your emotions as like colors, as sounds, as vibrations and frequencies, like everything. And and it got like it was really hard for me to follow trying to talk about it now, because you can't really explain what's happening to you. And just living in that instant and it's happening. Um, but you start to realize there's certain things going on around you that you never experienced before in your body on Earth. That I was on Earth at one moment, and then I'm in this other place, and this other place seems sort of like heaven, but it seems like it's sort of a little bit distant from like heaven. And there's beings there, and the beings are like talking to you and you're talking to them, and some of them are like really light beings, like angelic type beings, I guess. And people are explaining things to you. And but the thing is that like I'm like asking questions in my voice outside of, like trying to make sounds in the from the spiritual, this spirit world or whatever. So it's hard to communicate at first for me, because everyone else is basically using like telepathy to talk to you, but they're not just using telepathy. It's like everything has like a feel to it. Like when somebody's asking you a question or something, it's like you feel every emotional context of what they're asking about, um like as it's happening. So it was there were a lot of things that seemed confusing to me, especially trying to process back in my body at the end of my experience. But at the time, everything seems to be making like perfect sense. Like I knew where I was at. Like I knew that I was supposed to be there and that these things were going to happen. So I had things that I guess a lot of people would call a life review. That was one of the experiences that I had on the other side. I also experienced a very vast library, and in that library, it was almost like a university setting at some points of it, but in other parts of it, it was like very archaic and like very old, and I didn't understand really, what what I think people would say are like the Akashic records, or these places that I'd never even really heard about. I hadn't really had like a lot of spiritual experience from that standpoint of like understanding like what these places are that I might have been, um, because I was just there. So so it was basically like you had to go and get like you get checked in. You go and get your records checked in. And then for me, my records were basically like like going and putting in a VCR tape, right? But then that VCR tape like punched up like a million screens in front of you. Okay. And like I had this idea of heaven as this place I'd have to go stand in line and be judged in some way, right? Because I had a very Christian upbringing, and this idea of and none of those things were like happening, um like that I thought was supposed to be happening. Instead of these other things were happening. And so so you're I was standing basically in a seemed like a big open room. And in the big open room, there was a lot of TV screens, and I was looking up at all of these TV screens. And all of the TV screens, I start to realize, are like little parts of my life, like playing out. Okay. So I'm looking at all of these like, like maybe 10-second clips, maybe like a couple of minutes of clips of my experience. But my experiences at first, it was like, um, it felt very negative for me, from that standpoint, because the things that I was seeing were things that I wasn't proud of about myself. It was a lot of things opportunities that I would have had to do the right thing and chose not to. It was a lot of things like seeing how somebody hurt me in some way in my existence as a small child, for instance, and then in turn, went on to hurt someone else in the same way in the future, like with my words, for instance, like picking on someone or being a bully or things like that. So there were lots of these instances in this life review where I was having to look at a lot of what I would say are probably negative aspects of myself, or parts of my soul where I was lacking in some way. And I didn't handle situations in the best way that I could have, or I didn't speak up when I should have when things were happening around me. And I just kept my mouth shut, or, for a million different reasons, I made these choices that were sort of like ripples that went out from me every time I made these choices, right? So, so at the end of that life review, it was basically like all of the negative aspects of the life that I had lived. And a lot of times it was just times that I failed to do the right thing for whatever reason. And there's tons of different reasons why I think as a society we failed to do the right thing in situations. But these were all my situations and my life reviews. So it felt very, very unique to me. Like I could have done better. Um, like, oh my goodness, I could have handled that situation so much better. And instead, I chose to take the easy way out, or the coward's way out, or just do things that were self-serving instead of helping other people. So I went through a lot of those things. And then I had a second life review, and the second life review was amazing. It was incredible because I got to experience all of the ways that I did the right thing and that I helped other people out, or that I made the right decisions that rippled out into the universe all around me, that were the right decisions, that were doing the right thing. So for all of the things that I experienced in the negative life review, I was now experiencing in this really positive life review. And it was like doing things for in such a small way to me that seemed very like insignificant, that rippled in someone else's life in such a profound way that you like changed their existence or the path of their life in some way just by doing this one insignificant thing to you. There was a lot of moments in that life review where I felt that I was being tested to do the right thing or not do the right thing, but it's not like you're facing this test and you know that you're being tested or whatever. Like it seemed like there were times when I was meeting angelic beings, like in my actual life, in the life review, that I didn't realize were angelic beings, that I thought was like a bum on the streets, or like just as a for instance, or just like, this person that was like an insignificant person to you, like a waiter in a restaurant that spilled some soup on you and you had a conversation for a minute. I mean, like really basic things. But the thing was that it was almost like they were put in my path for me to make the good choices in my existence, to be like this great person. And I knew that I had the potential to be that person at that point. So I really felt like there was a lot of sorry, I'm trying to adjust myself because the light streaming in the window pretty severely. But I I guess the thing that was very profound to me at this point was all of the beautiful things that I'd chosen to participate in, and the things that I had gotten involved with in one way or another, just by being present, by being in that moment, by doing the thing that felt like right to me. And a lot of times those things are not self-serving either. They were like very selfless actions. They were very simple actions, like holding the door for someone and saying, have a great day, or, I mean, just like really simple things, acts of kindness, that changed people's actual life path. Like the ripple that you put out into the universe helped all of these people on their paths. Okay, so at this point, I'd like to talk about like universal love, like this unconditional love that I was experiencing, because at the end of the second life review, it was basically like all of a sudden I was like standing in the open in this big place that was sort of like an amphitheater, but also like a big garden or something, like a sunken garden, and there were people there, and a lot of people I didn't like recognize. They were like elder type people, like archetype type people, like people in robes and stuff, like people that I mean, I seemed out of time because I had this idea of where I was in my existence or whatever. These people are like, I guess, looking the way that they would look most comfortably in their point that they were in time. Um, Maybe when they arrived at heaven or wherever this place is that I was experiencing, because I don't really want to say that like I was in heaven, because I don't think I was actually in heaven at that point, because from my concepts, which is sort of a Christian based concept, I wouldn't be going to heaven yet. I hadn't I was still in the process, I guess. Like I'm doing the life review, I'm doing these things. So then I'm at this place. Now, this place is like Jesus is there in front of me. Like, but I straight up know this guy. Like I know this person. Like I have a very personal, like inside joke understanding with this person that's there, right? Like and it was amazing. It was like, oh my gosh, where have you been? It was like so amazing to suddenly be back there. So there's lots of other people around, but I was pretty focused on this one person that's standing there that I would say is Jesus Christ. Now, um, he says Yeshua, and that's who he explains himself as. Um, to me, I knew him as Jesus, and that was my sort of understanding of it. Now, I also met lots of other spiritual beings that were what I would, I guess, now say were probably ascended masters of some sort. But at the time, it's just like like there's lots of really wise people or wise beings around you that feel like they're earth beings. They still have that sort of energetic to them that like they were here too or something, or and then you start realizing who some of the people are. Like I knew who Mary was, like right away from my like Catholic upbringing. I knew who Mary was, and I knew some of the saints that I was sort of seeing, and I understood who those people were. So I sort of knew what was happening at that point. Um, so so I had some inside joke time with Jesus, where like I have a problem of swearing a lot. I used to, more than I do now. I used to pretty much swear like a sailor most of the time. I did construction for most of my existence in this reality here, and so I was around a lot of hard people, and they tend to have really thick skin and be like really playful, but also like push your buttons and all of that sort of thing. So a lot of really tough people, in my existence. So I was sort of like, I guess it's at the time, it just is something that happened because when you're first getting used to being over there, from my experience, I am saying stuff out loud, and it sounds really, really boomingly loud in the space that I was in, over there, when everyone else is telepathically communicating in this perfect way, and everyone is like their words are like beautiful, like flowing songs of joy just pouring forth out of everyone all over the place. Everyone's in like perfect pitch. All of the sounds that you hear are like not just like birds or things like you hear on Earth. It was like the hearing the emotion, um like it was words coming through the air. So there were a lot of things that I was trying to just get used to, and I'm like basically in my head saying, "Oh, Jesus Christ." Like, straight up, like, "Oh, Jesus Christ, I can't believe what's happening." But I'm saying this with Jesus Christ right there present. And I'm like saying this like, "Oh, Jesus Christ." And he's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, and he's like, "Yeah," like, and I'm like, "No, I can't even believe what's happening." And he's like, "Yeah, I understand where you're coming from." Like, he knows us. He knows us so much that he knows like his little inside jokes with you about the stupid things that you did as a kid or something. He like knows all of it, right? So it's not like you have a way to try to bargain for your life back, or like, "Oh, I could have done better. Just send me on back and I'll like do better like here in a minute," or whatever. Or I was like very concerned at the time, I remember, about my children and what was going to happen to them. And that was like a really big thing because I just felt like, "Oh my gosh, I could have done so much more." I could have like gotten them ready for real life, and not like life like reality, like you're gonna have to balance your checkbook and like go to work and whatever. Like, I'm talking like the real life stuff, like you need to be kind to each other. You need to love other people around you, and you need to like let the things go that are holding you back in your existence. Like, I really wanted to tell this stuff to my kids at that exact moment, and I felt like, wow, it's too late. I'm not going to ever be able to talk to them until, they get here. So there were a lot of things that were like really shocking that you're like handling like all at once and stuff. But I got introduced to a lot of people. I met Kuan Yin, in this place. And I had actually like worked at a foundry type of place that made concrete sculptures. And I'd worked on Kuan Yin sculptures before. And they were some of the hardest ones that we had to do at the foundry, and a lot of times they broke when you were trying to pull them out of the molds and stuff. They were like sort of fragile. So I knew Kuan Yin from having to like make these sort of things. And then Buddha was there, and I definitely like knew Buddha. So I knew like the male and female versions of Buddha at that point, but I like knew them. Like you felt like I felt like I knew these people, like these ascended masters. Like I was an ascended master too. Like the people that were there, I guess, had ascended were there, and it was like welcome to the club type of thing. But it was a lot more than that, because people were looking at the things that you did in your existence, and like you can't hide who you were in when these experiences are happening. Like, if you were being a crappy person at the time and you were having like vain, impure, shitty ass thoughts, then you got to have them in front of all of these people there, because you were still like everything was recorded and was processed, and everybody could, from my experience what I was experiencing at the time I was experiencing it, as if the experiencer was me at that point. So, but also the flip side of that is that I got to experience how I treated other people. Okay, so like I got to experience how I picked on other people and how that made them feel. I got to experience how I bullied other people and how that made them feel. I got to experience like betrayal and all of the different aspects of self that we go through these emotions. And I got to experience them, how I made other people feel in that moment too. So it was like that throughout the entirety of the life review, where you could zoom in on the smallest detail and be like, right here is where I broke this person's heart. Like I got to experience that. And then I could zoom in and then flip the script and then feel how I felt, how I made their heart break. Right? So there was a lot of these very profound things that were happening, where it wasn't like I was being judged in the sense of like fire and brimstone judgment that I was taught as a small child. I was experiencing judgment from how I felt about my own behavior, right? How my own actions felt, how I imposed my will in a negative way upon some other person, and what that made them feel like. So it gave me a much more profound understanding of my human experience and how I lived and how I could have done so much better in my existence. So I didn't feel like I was judged like I'm being smited because I did horrible crap. I felt like that I had the opportunity to do so much better. Okay. And then I went through a lot of things while I was there. Um, there's a lot of times where I felt sort of like I never felt like I was standing in a vast line of other people waiting my turn. Okay, so what I thought like the heavenly experience would be like is basically standing in line to be judged, you know? And what I was experiencing in my I guess infinite reality that I was experiencing is the opposite, really. That I was my harshest critic of the way that I lived my own existence, and the way that I behaved. And there were so many times when I could have behaved in a much more honorable way. And I really wanted to choose those paths a lot more in my existence. But I, at the time, started to realize that I wasn't on Earth anymore. I couldn't see my earthly body around anywhere. I was just having these other experiences. And these experiences were definitely not on earth in this place that I thought was myself. No, I'd felt through the electrocution and the body stuff that I dealt with in the beginning of my near-death experience that I was like I felt like that I felt there was no body to go back to, right? Like I felt like that body expire when I started that whole journey to where I was at that point. And I had a lot of profound experiences where I needed to rest at the end of all of it. At the end of the whole thing of going through the judgment process, and then sort of like the integration of I'm dead at this point, I went to a space where I had to rest. And I would call that again like the endless void. And at this point in my experience, I was surrounded by universal love of the universe. Like I felt God. I felt the spark of God. I had, during my experience, seen that I was a spark of the divine, that every spirit, every soul, when I was traveling towards the bright light in the beginning of that experience, I basically felt all of the other pieces of light or soul or source energy that was going towards this bright white thing. So I felt all of those things. So when I'm now in this void again, I feel completely like enveloped in love, like wrapped up in love and just profound peace. And I stayed in that place for a very long time, um, until I felt healed enough. I felt okay. Um, at that point, several people that I recognized from my life, my lifetime here, came to that void and spent time with me. And I think that the Catholics might call that place limbo, or the void. Um, and this place is outside of time, as everything that I was experiencing was outside of time. Like if your life review took 1,000,000 years, you would still be standing there until it was done. It like there was just like time was a concept that doesn't happen there. It's not like a practical concept for this other side. So I had experiences where this person that I knew from Earth, from this lifetime on Earth, was coming to me and having discussions with me about if I can come back or not, or if I wanted to come back or not. And some of these discussions, this lady was a healer that I knew in life. She's Navajo. Her own culture is Dene, is what she would call herself, I think. Um, and and she was a spiritual person that I knew in my life, because my brother had fallen in love with her daughter, and so that's how I met this person. Well, this person was able to come over to the other side, to this place that I was at, this spiritual place that was a void of love, like this dark energetic around you. um but it's completely this place of love. And then she would just sort of appear, and it would be like sitting down and having a conversation with someone, and they were just in a chair by your bedside, let's say, and they're just talking to you. And it's dark in the room, and you can see them sort of in the light, of the room, like candlelight or something. It was like that type of atmosphere when this person would come and talk with me. And she was basically like helping me through what I was trying to navigate as to whether I'm going to come back or not. And I didn't know that I was going to have an opportunity to come back. So that was a really big aspect, and I think that she was helping me with that. And she was like helping me like fix my organs in my body, um because they were pretty much ruined. The body was pretty much ruined, and when I died. And so she was helping me get to the point where I'd be able to come back. Um and then I had a very, very, very profound experience because I came back to Earth. Okay, so what that basically was like for me, and this happened every time that I went through my electrocution and having my heart restarted over and over again, was you go from the infinite of the universe and the cosmos all around you into this little bitty bitty vessel, which is like a tiny dot in the universe, right? And that little dot is you, and that little spark of soul that you are from the divine of the universe, like you're part of God energy, like the spark of God is in all of us. I call things God because that is my construct. That's what I understood growing up. Um, Other people might call things, that source energy, just the universe. They might call it by a specific entity, like say Jesus or you know Buddha. Um, I'm really trying not to go too deeply into religion with this. I can only come from my experience with it, because I also felt by meeting the other ascended masters when I was up there, that if a Buddhist person was gonna see Buddha at the end of it, because that's where they were thought they were headed, they were probably gonna be standing there talking to Buddha when they got there. It was like everybody was welcome. My welcoming committee was Jesus Christ and Mary, like the Virgin Mother of God, from my experience, okay? But I also feel at this point in my experience, just my own personal experience, if I was a Buddhist or a Hindu or a Muslim person, just as a for instance, or a Jewish person or of any significant faith, then I would be having that experience with the deity that I most like vibrated with at what that frequency, right? So I'm not trying to say, first of all, that Jesus is the path to heaven, because that was my path. That's where I was at, right? But I'm not saying that a Buddhist person wouldn't have a similar experience. They would have a similar experience with Buddha or Krishna or Vishnu, or I'm just throwing a couple of things out there. But the thing is that I came back with this profound knowing that we're all the same, that we're all the same, and that we can all do so much better in our existence than we have been doing. And it's because I think that people are really sort of hung up on this idea of self. And when I died, I realized there's no ego anymore when you're standing outside of yourself looking down at this fat, dead meat sack on the ground. I had no attachment to that dude, at all. But that person mattered to somebody, right? But I was eternal. I was eternal. So when I got the when I got the gift of being able to come back, it was amazing. And when I first came back, I woke up in the ICU. Now we've gone from my experience to back into my body, and I'm coming back to the world right now. Glenwood Springs, Colorado. It's been a week and a half at this point. I've been intubated the whole time. A machine is breathing for me. My family had sort of come and gone. My sister came first, and I guess other people had sort of been through the ICU, but I didn't remember any of that stuff. I wasn't there. I was in this void somewhere else. The void was, like I said, it started out like a void, and then it just started being like little spots of light that were like little stars, right? So then in the opposite of that, I was like all of a sudden wedged back into this little bitty speck that's my body on the planet. And I wake up, I'm intubated, I have tons of stuff happening, machines are going off, alarms are happening. I don't realize that any of the stuff that's happening is even real. I don't even realize this is reality that I'm looking at. This is my 3D reality. Again, and I can't breathe. I have stuff jammed down my throat. I'm trying to yank stuff out, but I can't even move my body around. I can just thrash basically a little bit. And I hear my sister's voice like, "Don't yank on that. Quit trying to take that out. They're gonna get you back. And they were trying to pull stuff out of my body so that I could breathe on my own. So once that happened, I realized that I was really back here on Earth, that this is, and then I started to talk to the person in the room, which was my sister, and I wasn't even sure if at this point I was having an experience or if I was still dead on the other side, having some like something else happening or something. So I'm having this conversation and you know, I guess I pass out and then I come back out of it and at that point I wake up and my grandparents are in the room, in the ICU unit in Glenwood Springs. My grandparents, bless their hearts, are in the room, and they were the ones that basically brought me back. Like were my angels, my guardian angels that helped me get back to my body to find my way back so that I could sit up and freak everybody out in the room. You only get to do that once when you come back, and it really freaks people out when all of a sudden you're sitting up flailing around. So I remember that part of the experience. I remember seeing my grandparents there, and they were like basically what I would say is a vortex or a portal, and they were on the other side of the portal, and they were like talking into the room, like from the other side. There was a void between us, right? And they couldn't really cross into the reality, but they came as close as they could. They came all the way into the room. Okay, so they got there. And the thing is, my sister was there. She was really there in this reality. She was there in the room when I woke up. She saw them in her mind, knew that they were there, smelled them there, like knew my grandparents' energy in the room with us, okay? And I'm telling her, they're right here. I'm talking with them right now. They just brought me back. And it was a really very, very spiritually transformative moment for her, because it gave her a lot of, I think, validation in her own existence that there is stuff out there other than us in this reality, and that our grandparents are already angels in heaven type of thing. But they're like guardian spirits, I guess, more than angels, because angels are really angelic beings. My grandparents, I think, presented themselves in that way for me because that was what my experience, sorry, I'm like snotting and stuff. What my experience sort of um represented was that they were sort of like this in this angelic realm, and they were sort of guardians watching over me. But they told me that I wasn't going to be able to make it, that I wasn't going to be able to live if they didn't physically come from the veil, from the other side into that room and bring me energy. I was literally told that my grandparents were saving me and bringing me energy to be able to make it, to survive this, to survive what happened. I got to tell you at this point, like the the feeling of unworthiness is so intense because a lot of people don't get to come back. They don't get to come back. They don't get to cross over and go through the experiences I had and be able to come back and hug their children again. The idea that you could hug your family again, that you could see your children again. But not only that, for me, the idea that everybody's waiting somewhere else on the other side for us, and it's a veil literally so thin that they were able to come into my my hospital room and and be there. So that was a very profound experience, right? Um, And then the real work sort of begins once you're back into the reality of this life again. Um, because at the time, I'd spent almost 2 weeks out of my body. And when I got back, it was pretty broken. Um, like this is some of the things that can really be collaborated, I guess, by technology, by science, by the doctors, and them looking at the actual X-rays and CAT scans and MRIs. And I went through a lot, a lot, because I had the heart attack, and that's what caused everything, and that's what made my heart go through all of the stuff that happened. And there was a secondary thing that happened to me. I had a severe stroke. My stroke was what they call a hemorrhagic stroke. A hemorrhagic stroke is when you have a brain aneurysm. I had a brain hemorrhage. I had a blood vessel pop inside of my brain that was bleeding internally that the pressure couldn't be relieved from because I was in such bad shape from having my heart attack. My heart attack was so bad um, I laid dead for almost half an hour. And so you're not supposed to be able to come back from that. Your blood is congealing in your body at that point, literally congealing into a solid from a liquid form at that point. So when I'd come back, there a lot of damage had happened to this vessel that I was in, this physical body, not only the stents that had to go into my heart, but then that hemorrhagic stroke, it severed my right and left parietal lobe of my brain and made my right parietal lobe stop working, like 100% stop. 0% brain activity on one side of my brain and normal activity from that standpoint with the other side of my brain. Um, and then my brain started to a little bit reactivate, I guess. You know, um, you come back, you're facing this giant amount of adversity and physical trauma that you've been through. I had like all of my ribs broken. I had my ribs broken to powder in certain spots because bless his heart, the guy that started first doing chest compressions and brought me back, very large person, and he was able to push with a lot of force to try to get me to come back and breathe again. And my old ribs got powdered in spots. Like I woke up and my ribs were broken, not like once. They were broken to powder in a couple spots. They were like broken to the point they'd poked holes all through my lung cavity, and I like was drowning in my own like blood in my lungs. My organs had completely shut down. My colon was dead. It was black. It was dead. It was no activity. And that had been going on for 2 weeks at that point. 2 weeks with like a dead organ in my body. And it just kept there was more. There was a chain of events. It was like, we can't do anything about your brain aneurysm, the brain bleed you have, because we can't do surgery on you because you couldn't survive it. So then it was like, wait to see if you're going to survive or not. Okay. And there was a lot of times when everyone around me didn't think that I was going to survive, but my stroke had given me a traumatic brain injury, so I couldn't remember that I wasn't supposed to die. So every morning, the doctors would come in shocked, looking at me because they expected me to die overnight. And I was still there the next morning, not realizing how bad the situation was and how I wasn't supposed to be there anymore. And it just kept going like that and going like that. So So at this point, they had to transfer me to another hospital. They took me to the big hospital in Denver. I went to a specific hospital in South Denver called Swedish Medical Center. I went to the ICU at Swedish. It was Colorado in the winter time, so they had to drive me by ambulance because they couldn't fly me because there were snowstorms happening. So they had to drive me down from Glenwood Springs, which is on the western slope of Colorado, and they had to drive me to the eastern plains of South Denver. So that was a really grueling experience, and they didn't really expect for me to survive that. My family had come during this time, and basically was all everyone was saying their goodbyes to me, and I don't even really remember, although I had like a lot of conversations with people, I can't really remember the conversations, what we talked about. My children, my actual children came and saw me in Glenwood Springs in the hospital, and I don't remember that they were there or anything. So they at least were able to say goodbye to me, right? And that was the last time that they saw me for like maybe 8 weeks or more, So I was in Swedish for a really long time. I had to learn how to first like sit up, move, roll over, pull yourself up on something. It took me weeks of learning how to be able to move again, just to like sit up, to be able to swing my feet over the edge of the bed. Um, it probably for the first month and a half, I wasn't able to actually urinate like on my own. So it was always through a catheter or on myself, because basically you come back and I was like a small child. I had all my big words in my head, but I couldn't do anything for myself. I had like so many doctors. I had specialists everywhere. There were like people wanting to sign on to my case. There were doctors everywhere wanting to see me because I was such a unique case, because I didn't realize this at the time. You never do, really. And people don't communicate how fucked up everything is for you at the time either. They just don't tell you like, "Oh my God, you're so messed up right now, dude." Like you have no idea. So I didn't know really what condition I was in. I hadn't looked at myself in a mirror for like almost 2 months because I couldn't even get to a sink to look or anything. So I had no idea of what condition I was really in. But I'd gone from like 230 pounds before my heart attack to the when I woke up with the stents in my heart a week and a half later, I was 289 pounds. Like I gained over 50 pounds in body weight just by laying there with water weight from all of the IV fluids just being pumped into me. I hadn't eaten for like a long, long time at that point. And then when I got to Denver, they realized how bad off I was, how I hadn't been able to be treated for my stroke in any way. And then at that point, it was like too late to do anything about it. So then they were like, "We're just gonna see if your brain bleed stops," right? So that was the thing. So that it went on for 3.5 weeks. I had like a brain bleed in my head that they couldn't control, they couldn't stop, they couldn't do anything about. The doctors just had to stand there and tell me, We can't really do anything for you. We can try to keep you comfortable." Well, as soon as I realized they were pumping drugs into my body, I was like, quit it. And I quit all of those IV sort of drugs. I refused to take any like painkillers or anything for my body. I was like, that's the stuff that's killing me. I need to get away from all of that. I need to be able to feel like I'm here. So there was a lot of stuff to just try to go through, like just the everyday. Seeing my parents were there, and that was awesome because I was able to talk to somebody and through some stuff, through what was happening, because I was a lot of times incapacitated. I couldn't understand the words that people were saying. I had to sort of relearn a lot of things because people could talk to me and I would say stuff like, okay, I understand, but I didn't understand what the words were. I didn't understand what people were saying. I didn't understand how bad things were and stuff. So in some ways I was really blessed with that um, not having that short-term memory anymore. Because I think if I had that short-term memory and people were constantly telling me I was going to die, I probably would have died. I would have because that's what everybody was saying, oh, you're not going to make it. Like they try to give you this is what it basically was for me. They said with a hemorrhagic stroke, left there's a left hemisphere and a right hemisphere in your brain. And with a hemorrhagic stroke, 5% of people survive the left hemisphere one, and 5% of people survive the right hemisphere one. So at that point, I had 5% chance of survival just from those odds. But then they say you die at home and then nobody found you right away. So that's like pretty much the worst way to die. They would much rather have you die on the way to the hospital in the ambulance or die in the emergency room as you're saying, you can't feel your left side or whatever, because then they know that, oh, you're having this, we're here, we can treat you immediately. For somebody to die at home by themselves, not be found right away, not be able to be brought back right away, not be able to stabilize their heartbeat, in any way, having to be shocked over and over again. They shocked me so many times I had burns in my mouth, all throughout my mouth. I had third-degree burns in my mouth from the electrocutions, right? So, I mean, there was a lot of things that went on that took a long time to process. And throughout that process, I started to realize how blessed I was to be back and how unworthy I was of that. There were so many people that were way better than me, way better people than me. I'm not saying I was like a horrible, horrible person. I'm just saying, think about all of the children that don't make it from the things that I experienced. Think about all of the people that are wealthy, that are, whatever. I mean, that could have been something, that could have done something to profound to change the world. They didn't get to survive what happened to them. I did. I came back. I got sent back here, and it was absolutely miraculous because that's the only way that I could even be here today is through miracles. Like modern science doesn't even have explanations for why I'm here, for why I was able to beat that 1% odd that I was going to come back from this hemorrhagic stroke. But it was like the stroke, the heart attack, the lung issues, all of the broken bones, and then the dead colon, the completely shut down GI tract. So it was a lot of stuff to try to come back from. Any one of those things should have just killed me and not allowed me to continue. And I was somehow able to get through all of those things and be able to come on the other side of it. But it takes a really long time to sort of come back. I mean, at this point, I'd spent over 2 months in the hospital. This was the third hospital, and then I had two emergency room visits rushed away from that hospital as well. So I went to 5 different hospitals before I even went to the recovery hospital, which at that point, the recovery hospital teaches you how to walk again. At this point, I was still in a wheelchair. I was able to wheel myself around. I was able to use a walker and walk maybe 5 to 10 steps before I was pretty winded. If I tried to walk the length of the hospital floor, that I would pass out almost, and I'd have to fall back into the wheelchair and stuff. So the recovery hospital was about 2 weeks. They taught me how to walk again and how to do through physical therapy and learn to walk and upstairs and downstairs and how to get in and out of a car. There's so many things that our physical body just takes for granted that I had to sort of relearn. And So at that point, you're just relearning a lot of physical things, and you're not even able to really decompress to think about all of the spiritual things that happened, all of the traumatic things that happened, because the idea of facing a life review is amazing and traumatic all at the same time, because I realized how shitty I was, or how many, but really it's not that. It's more like I realized how many opportunities I had to do better. And and I wanted to, once I came back here, to try to put that into, regular practical things of how can I just be so grateful to be here? How can I try to process what all of the things that happened to me, and how can I try to be a better person? How can I try to have a better life? How can I help others out more? And the things that I realized was family is is one of the most important things. It's such a gift that we're given, and I know a lot of people don't have like really solid, stable family lives. A lot of people come from broken homes. A lot of people don't have two parents in the traditional sense. Kids get adopted out and fostered out, and all kinds of things happen. And people get raised by their grandparents or their aunts or uncles or whatever, right? But all of that is like really an actual important, integral part of what happens on the other side, because all of these people on the other side that are your ancestors, that are your ancestral relations, they are the people that are cheering you on in life. Like a success for me, like, is a big deal to them. It's a big deal to them. It's like how uh like people will stream reality TV shows, and they get really attached to the character in the reality TV show, and they really cheer that person on. It's just like that in what I was calling, like, I guess, heaven in this experience, is people are cheering you on, and your success is theirs too. Like, people get to feel your success, like feel like what that is like from the other side, because it's they're still you're still part of that machine that's like somehow downloading everything on the other side so that it can all be processed at the on once you're over onto the other side. I mean, it's like it's very confusing. I'm not sure if it's going to make sense for people or not, because you have to realize that everything that you're hearing from me is from a person that's had a very traumatic brain injury, and it's called a ischemic stroke, which means that it happened internally. It's a ischemic brain injury, and an external brain injury is what people traditionally call like a TBI, like they got hit by a car, and it banged the side of their head or something like that. So they have an external trauma that creates an internal problem. And I had a internal trauma that created an internal problem instead. So, I mean, that's, I guess, one of the differences that I dealt with, where other people have had traumatic brain injuries, and I can't even get the same care that those people have, because the insurance company structures in place have limits to what they will cover based on the words, right? So then I had a traumatic brain injury, but I didn't have a traumatic brain injury because they. If I had a traumatic brain injury, then they would have had to cover certain things under insurance, and that's not the case, because insurance only sees a traumatic brain injury as an external trauma that happens to a person on the inside in their brain. So, like a blow to the head, falling down, hitting your head, any of those sort of traumatic things is considered a TBI, and I have a internalized, traumatic brain injury. So it's different. I mean, it's ridiculous. I had no idea the levels of wording and how things are worded in our lives until I started dealing with things like the Social Security Administration, trying to figure out what disability looks like. Because there's a lot of things that happen when you come back that, like, basically I couldn't work anymore. I mean, it wasn't not only I couldn't work at that point, I couldn't even sit up, I couldn't even wipe my butt. I couldn't even like not, I had to depend on someone else because I was soiling myself in the hospital, laying in the hospital bed. I could barely even like lift arch my back up so that they could slide a bedpan under me. I mean, so in the beginnings of it, it's not only like ridiculously humbling from the stuff that you end up experiencing, but the level of care and the kindness of others and this sort of compassion that nurses and doctors are sort of like geared towards in our society, you really start to feel a lot of that a lot more. And then I kept wanting to talk to the people that were around me. At the time, it was all medical personnel about what I'd experienced on the other side. Okay. And then I started to realize as I would look at people and they would look at me as I was talking about what had happened, and I was realizing that they were all looking at me like I was crazy. And that they were like nodding, like, uh-huh, as I'm talking about stuff, like trying to sort of appease me, going through this appeasement process, instead of like even hearing what I'm talking about or having the discussion in any way, because a lot of people didn't believe any of it, or they just assumed that I was high on the drugs that they were giving me to live through the experience or whatever. So it was really, there were a lot of eye-opening things that happened for me with it that were traumatic, I think, in a lot of ways, you know. And there was a lot of things that I had to come to terms with because my own family struggled with some of the things that I wanted to talk about. My own family struggled with some of the things like when I would talk about my grandparents being up there and coming back with me to Earth and being in the room and communicating with me and my sister. A lot of other people that were around me had problems with some of those things. And then when I started talking about my actual experience with Yeshua and spending time, in this garden, um, that really bothered a lot of people because I wasn't having the traditional Christian experience of going to heaven and then being weighed and measured and judged and then dropping through to hell or whatever. There weren't those aspects of what I specifically was dealing with, and my experience is profound, personal, and truly uniquely my own. So if anyone else has had near-death experiences or has even listened about people that have, um, a lot of people have very different experiences than what I had. A lot of people hover around their hospital, room, and look down at their body for a second and get really freaked out, and then come back and are like, I had a near-death experience and I saw myself, and 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 that's the extent of their experience, and it was amazingly profound for them. The experience I had was off the rails, crazy town profound for myself, as well as the things of trying to process what happened. The actual processes of, oh my gosh, I came back to this, but I know how broken that body was, how broken that spirit form was of the person that I was prior to the event and the day and what happened. And then I realized also the profound difference of the person that woke up in that hospital room, compared to the person that I was before I had my experience. So things that I sort of took away from it was that it seemed to me in my personal experience that there were lots of different spiritual practices that get you to a specific level that you can attain here while here on earth. Like while here on earth, you can be a practicing Buddhist and you can meditate and you can have spiritually transformative experiences from those processes. There's people that take hallucinogenics to be able to have these profound experiences, or to maybe heal trauma. I know that in places like Colorado, people are taking magic mushrooms to be able to heal trauma and to be able to heal ancestral trauma or trauma that has been put upon them by adults when they were small children. So there's I know that there's ways and coping mechanisms out there that people have to be able to handle some of these things. The things that I found specifically that helped me was being able to discuss it with like-minded people that were open, like not closed-minded. And by closed-minded, I guess I'm really saying like having a having a idea of what the outcome is already supposed to be, and because because from what I was experiencing, there were lots of different paths that got people to these spiritual places that I was able to go to, like when I was in my soul body. So I know that that there were Buddhists there too, that there were Christians there too, that there were Taoists there too, that there was, Catholic people, that there was Christian people there too. From what I understand, there's people that don't believe in God that have had very profound spiritual experiences, whether they were atheist or not. They didn't, if you don't believe in the idea of heaven, how can you suddenly be standing there? In having this experience. And like what I said too is I talk about heaven, but then I also say I didn't really go to heaven because I truly feel like I was in a separate place from that where I was still in this like limbo is all I can really, that's the sort of Catholic term for it. But I felt like I was in a place where I had the opportunity to work on um, myself, where I had the opportunity to maybe heal some of the things that I was dragging around with me from this life and perhaps lives prior to this life. Because I felt prior to my experience that we had a very linear life, that I was going to live one life, that I believed that I was going to die and then eventually I was going to be in heaven, and that I would probably be going to a place in limbo, waiting for heaven to sort of happen or transpire, because that was my belief system and those were the things that I understood. Now I have a very different, um, like, uh, I have a very different belief, because the belief I have now is based on my experience, my own personal experience with it. Um, so it's hard to relate to my family sometimes. It's hard to relate to other people sometimes, because I feel like I'm sort of coming from a place where I'm trying to still reintegrate into our society and into this three-dimensional reality, which for me prior seemed like the only thing that there was this reality, this 3D existence. And now I profoundly feel that there is a lot more to it than this specific existence and this experience. And I feel like that I had probably been here many times and gone through many lifetimes. But the lifetime that I'm experiencing right now is the one that I'm remembering because I'm living this right now. But from what I understand, we have the ability to be able to heal ancestral traumas in our existence. And we have the ability to not only heal it for us, but to be able to heal it for everyone in our family line, all the way back to source, all the way back to the spark of existence. We can heal ourselves. And these are some of the things that you just know and you know to be true. And the thing is that I don't have to be a learned person to be able to have this experience. I don't have to understand the way that all of it works. I don't have to understand the science behind it. I don't have to even have the realization behind any of it. It just is. The things that I experienced were. They were. The coming back into three-dimensional reality is you I realize the vastness of the universe, how small we are in this insignificant little speck of it. Okay. But then also at the same time, when I was over there, it was as if every single thing was geared towards the experience that I had. Like it was so important. It was so important to everybody else. Like the experience that I had, that I was able to have that experience. When I was able to come back, oh my goodness, what a gift. What a gift. Like blessed beyond measure. I don't care. I like couldn't sit up in bed. I was crapping all over myself. I was like in constant pain, constant ridiculous amounts of pain because I wouldn't take painkillers for it anymore. I just wanted to experience my existence again. And I was experiencing that pain, that level of pain was experiencing my existence again, right? But when you're over there, you're experiencing that existence and realizing how much you want to be in this existence. I also have started to realize how I guess lucky a person is to have a near-death experience because it's like a reset in a lot of ways. It's like flipping a switch and getting a reset in a lot of ways that I don't think people really understand because we are birthed here on Earth, right? So our experience is only linear from the point of being in the womb and conception and going through in utero and being born through the birth canal or taken out through cesarean section. You're still experiencing that birth and coming into the world type of experience, right? So when I was coming back from my near-death experience, it was like having this rebirthing experience too, of like trying to reintegrate into a body. The idea of like a soul being wedged into this physical being was a shocking experience for me to have to go through again. And it was a what I felt like an incredibly painful experience. The electricity of being shocked back into my body over and over again was horrifically painful experience, and that's what allowed me to be able to survive. So, but then I'm able to process things a lot different than a child's mind, than like a newborn baby's mind. It's like I'm sitting up, talking, having these conversations with people. Newborns just cry. And I was like a crying too. I was a crying little baby, crapping my diapers and unable to lift my own head, right? I'm serious. This is like it's so how it is, right? And the thing is that people don't explain to you how it's going to be when you're trying to reintegrate, like how painful it is because like my body swelled up over 50 pounds in like a couple of days, right? It takes a long time for that like weight, that body weight to get off of you, for that energy to get back where it's supposed to be, for you to like shrink back, like when my ankle was as big as the top of my thigh normally is. So your skin splits open and like bleeds, and it's like all this horrific pain things. I had a ridiculous amount of PT type stuff that I had to go through, physical therapy. They had to abrade my wounds on my ass because I had been unconscious for so long that I had pressure ulcers all over my backside because I had been in ICU. I had been in a coma. They're supposed to turn you over and roll you around and do all these things to you and stuff. It's pretty hard when you're hooked up like to a million machines and they're like breathing for you and stuff. So I mean, things happen. And then like it took me like over 8 months to have the wounds on my back heal. They were just open wounds, open sores on my body. Like it's crazy the amount of stuff that you have to just go through. And those are just the physical things to come back, like that those pressure ulcers I had on my back were scary. Like people when people look upon something that is your body and they look at you horrified with this shocked look and there's no mirrors in the room, there's a reason, they don't want you to know what it's like and how bad it is because our body like would go into shock and not be able to cope with it anyway if we were looking upon it. So then it's like it's such a blessing in some ways that it takes a while for all of our systems to sort of reboot and stuff. And I talk about a lot of it now more like a computer and what a computer goes through because I feel we're more like biological computer entities. And I also feel like that we wear like human skin suits of and think this is me, this is my person, this is who I am, right? And then everything that we relate to is about the ego of this person, of this personhood, and this thing that you think you are or whatever. And from my profound experience, we are not the suit that we wear at all in any way. We are all of the divine, and we are all a spark from that source, and we all belong there. That's really where we're all from. I think that we come to Earth specifically to have experiences that are individualized because where I was at on the other side, everything is simultaneous, everything is instant. Your thoughts are instantaneous thoughts. Your thoughts have color and sound and vibration, and like everybody's singing in tune and in key and in perfect harmony, and like there's angelic choirs and all this stuff happening around you, right? It's like a million things happening all at once around you, and you're just trying to process it. There's no way that you can put that into words. There's no way that I've been able to. is is the way that it felt to me. It felt like I would come to Earth so that I could have my own individual thought. It would be like I would come to Earth so that I would be able to actually feel my depth of sorrow or my depth of love or the vibration of like unity or the vibration of anger. I mean, all of these things are like things that we have to experience nonstop all the time in this existence. Over there, it's much more not on the individual level. It's just like everyone experiences it all the time. And like I said, with the machinery, the way that it worked, everybody could experience what you'd felt in any moment because all of these things are happening and you're just sort of like experiencing them and just having this singular experience, but there's also this realization that other people can hear your thoughts and stuff, and like all these things are happening around you, and like the experience and the vibration and I'm putting off are like influencing profoundly the other people that are around me in that sort of space when I'm first over there on the other side, because they're having to experience my individual experience still, so all of these, like I'm talking, this is probably why people say that like God has an omniscient view of things, like omnipotent view of life or whatever, because it seemed boundless. It seemed infinite. It seemed like it goes on forever, forever over there. So like the depth of your experience goes on forever, and everyone's experience is like intertwined together. Like like people come here to experience individuality. People come here to experience individual self so that they can actually grow from experiencing the lessons versus sort of downloading the lessons. Like a native speaker of a language speaks the language better than somebody that downloaded it off of like Google Translate type of thing, so like the idea of learning what your individual emotion feels like and individual self and the quietness that I feel. I have traumatic brain injury, so I am constantly quiet in my head. There's like silence most of the time, like crickets, 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 just silence. So I experience what people can't experience here on Earth because people can't be quiet in their head. Their minds go a million miles a minute. Like my mind used to always be filled with a million things that had nothing to do with the situation. I couldn't even enjoy my existence. I couldn't even enjoy the moment of time in my existence because I was constantly berated with all of the other things in my mind that are supposed to be like self-doubts and worries and concerns and desires and all of these pursuits. And the thing was, none of that shit is real. Like none of those things are real. All of this stuff is an illusion. Our reality is an illusion. The reality of our existence is the infinite nature of our existence. The other side is really where we're in our real element, in our real environment. Over here, we're having this individualized existence that seems like it's truly and uniquely ours, and that's why we really come here. So I guess the main thing that I would like to try to impart with people is that they shouldn't feel alone because they aren't alone. It seemed like there were constantly angelic beings around me on the other side. Those angelic beings are still with us, like as our guides and as our people here on Earth. And I don't know how to really put it into words other than this. Do you have a internal voice? If you have an internal voice inside of your head that some people would call your conscience, and your conscience is like positive and negative or whatever, that's sort of the type of thing I'm talking about. Like we can get in tune with vibration, with our consciousness. And that's more what we're supposed to be doing. Like the real work we're supposed to be doing here on Earth is healing the Earth, is healing our ancestors, is helping our relations that are already on the other side, that are cheering for us to do better, to be the most sincere, best version of ourselves while we're on this planet, because it matters on that side how we treat one another on this side. And it's very, very profound. I can't even express to you the amount of love that God has for each and every one of us. And God to me was like the universe, was like it was this vast thing that is a living entity that I didn't experience God like how people would, I guess, in traditional like Christian belief systems in Christianity, you would think God's on a throne in heaven, and the Lamb of God is there, and certain things you would expect, I guess, from a Christian ethos. But I didn't meet God on a throne or anything, but I did meet the Godhead if you believe in Christianity, like the co-equalness of God and Jesus Christ. I would say that, I met Yeshua and I had a very profound experience with him, and I already knew him, and I knew a lot of things about how he'd helped me in this life already, and how he'd been with me through all of my pain and sorrow and trials and tribulations, and when I was at my lowest in life, there were still beings all around me that had my best interest at heart, that truly cared about me to the point that they love me like crazy, and they just want to see me do the best I can and be the best version of myself that I can be. And I really want for people to know that how loved they are, how much Spirit loves them, how much God loves them, how much Yeshua loves me. It's you're like madly in love with this person when you meet Yeshua. You're madly in love with this person. You're like, I've loved you my whole life. I've waited forever to meet you again. Is how it felt for me. Um, and the thing is that all of the ascended masters that I met, it's like that with all of them. Okay, so like when I'm meeting Kuan Yin, or when I'm meeting Mary, um, it's it's like I love you like crazy, and they love you like crazy, and they're so happy that you're there. They're so happy for you, and they're like, it's not all about you, but it is also all about you because you just got back there, right? So it's like, here's my coming home party or whatever, and that's really how a lot of it feels. And and people have a lot of questions about it that they want to ask me, and I would love to try to help people with some of those things, but they're going to have their own personal experiences and stuff, and it's not right for me to say their experience is any different or anything than mine, or that like it's worse or better or whatever. I mean, it's just the experience. So a Buddhist person is going to have their experience when they ascend. They're going to have their ascension is there's going to be a big party on the other side when people ascend, and that ascension is we have it in us to be the best versions of ourselves, to be the best that we can be, and we can change the world and our own planet Earth, and bring it back from the brink of where we've allowed it to get in our society by the way that we've treated this this gift. We have a absolute precious gift of the earth, and we need to really try to take care of it. And that's another aspect of what I've come back, and the message that I really have is that God loves us, that it is real. The other side is real, is more real than anything here seems real. And people are pretty attached to their reality here. So um yeah, anyway, I just wanted to make sure that I was able to get this out because I've waited a really long time to have this conversation, and I hope that people feel that I'm sincere in what I went through, and it was very profound for me. And I want you all to know that the loved ones that you're mourning that aren't here anymore, that feel like they've left you in some way, they still are here. They are still are with you, not just in spirit, but they literally try to help you on your path to be successful here on earth. And they're cheering us on all the time. And so we really need to try to just be the best version that we can of ourselves, our own authentic self. It's not like I have to be the wealthy version of me, or I have to be the powerful version of me, or I have to be this or that. It's not about any of those things. It's really just about being your loving, authentic, compassionate self that really is foundational of who we're supposed to be here, and why we're here. So thank you for this time. I appreciate it.
You're so welcome, Chris, and thank you. I realized when we were talking, we didn't really say how long ago was your near-death experience, just so the
Oh
audience.
yeah, my near-death experience happened April 4th of 2020 two.
Yeah.
So I'll have been back here on Earth for almost 2 years. In April of 2025 will be my 2 year anniversary, April 8th, of what my cardiologist called my really bad day. So
Really, that's a mild way of putting it.